Welcome to another episode of Slamfire, guys. Thanks for joining us. Been looking at some of the channels on BitChute, and not necessarily Rumble, just mostly BitChute. We're getting a lot of viewers on BitChute, so I want to throw a quick shout out to you guys on BitChute. Really appreciate all the views and attention you guys are giving us to just natural growth. So remember, you can go to slamfiremedia.com, and we have all our episodes listed there. So if you want to watch on YouTube, BitChute, or Rumble, everything, all the links there are on slamfiremedia.com. Just pick whatever episode you want. There's like a little detailed, not detailed, but a little summary on the side there of the episode, so you can kind of get an idea if you're interested in that episode or not. But like I said, all that is on slamfiremedia.com. All right, guys, I don't want to waste too much time. Just get into it really quick. So today, with everything that's kind of going on, and my wife and I went on a little trip yesterday. Not not a trip. We just went shopping yesterday, kind of, and it kind of sparked the idea in my mind to talk about something that I feel a little bit familiar with. I'm not an expert by any means, but I do feel comfortable about the topic, and I have a firm stance on it, so it's a little bit easier for me to talk about it. So we've had an episode where we kind of talked about the importance of freedom, right? Why it's important to have freedom, because we cannot do a one size fits all type of solution, right? Because there's so many different people in so many different types of situations that there's no way that you can just put a simple solution that applies to every single person's problems, right? It's just not practical. I don't even think it's possible, right? If it was possible, it probably would have been done already. I mean, they've tried it with communism, and that's failed all the time that it's been tried, right? It's like, oh, here's this one thing that's going to make everybody happy, and it ends up usually only working out for a select few, right? So that was kind of the gist of that episode. Why individual freedoms are so important, right? Leaving it up to a person, to an individual person to decide their own reality, right? Not necessarily reality, but what they decide what's best for them, right? Whatever it is, based on their situation. Uh, they traverse through life however they feel they should do it, and all we can kind of do is facilitate that, right? Because everyone's needs are different. So this kind of stems from this idea. So it has more dealing with like thinking of personal rights and responsibilities, right? Whose job is it to take care of you, right? Whose job is it if you're a family person, right? If you're a guy or a girl, you're a mom or a dad, or if you're a kid in high school or something, right? Like, whose responsibility is it to take care of you? So, in the sense right now, in the sense of speaking in terms of like right now, where you are, like age and all of that, legal requirements and all that stuff, we're kind of just gonna skim over, not really skim over that. We're gonna kind of just shoot past over that. We're not even gonna really go into that. But in the general sense, it's the idea of who should be taking care of people. Should the government be taking care of its people? Should people be taking care of people? Should the state be taking care of people? Right? Like, should God be taking care of people? Who is the person? Who is the one responsible ultimately for someone else's well-being? Okay, so this is basically in the sense for adults. This is an easy stance for me to talk about. I mean, like, I feel if you are an adult and you are of sound mind and body, for the most part, I feel like, well, as of lately, I have not been of sound mind and body, but I think that's just part of growing up. That every human being that is capable of doing some sort of work, that is able to think rationally and think logically, get some sort of work done, whether that's physical or mental work done, that they have the larger degree of responsibility to protect themselves, whether that's physically, mentally, financially, in every aspect, right? Whatever taking care of yourself means to you, that should be on the person of I'm thinking the person that is thinking that, who is responsible, it should be that person, right? I'm trying to think of like in fourth person, in I'm thinking like 4D chess here. I'm trying to make sure that I'm that you understand that I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about someone else as if you were them. So I'm confusing myself. But ultimately, it's it's an individual's responsibility to take care of themselves, right? That's like the general idea. Now, there are some exceptions, of course. There's exceptions to everything. That's why freedom is so important, right? So you have people that are obviously disabled, right? They're not disabled because they chose to be disabled. Like, hey, I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna, I'm gonna be blind today. I'm gonna wake up and be blind, or I'm gonna wake up and have a mental defect, or I can't speak, or I can't think rationally, or some sort of mental defect that no one has control over because, life is unfair sometimes, and it is what it is. That's the reality. So there are special considerations to those things, right? Like there's exceptions to those things, and I really think that that's when like the welfare state should be kicking in, because as a lot of people would probably disagree. I know my family would disagree because they think like, oh, you just want to get rid of government completely. You want to get rid of welfare and this and that. Because I rag on welfare a lot because I see how it's used in my community. I see how it's used in the area that I live in, and it's not really used by people who really need it. It's used by people that are kind of taking advantage of the system. But I do believe it has its place in society, which is in this particular instance. I mean, probably has other uses and things like that, but in this particular case, there are people who are literally not in control of their body, right? They have conditions that they were born with that it's no one's fault. It's just a product of life, right? Life is hard. We fell out of the Garden of Eden and now we have to suffer these imperfections, and it is what it is. So in those specific circumstances, I believe there is reason to have some sort of welfare state, some sort of welfare program to take care of these people that need this legitimate help, right? That I would totally be down for my taxpayer money for all my taxes to go towards programs that help the truly disenfranchised, the true people that have been rolled a bad that rolled a bad hand, because you roll hands in poker, right? Have been dealt a bad hand in life, right? It's just one of those unfair situations that no one has control over, right? So in those particular situations, that there should be exceptions, of course, but generally speaking, if you're able, like I said, if you're able to do something, if you're able to produce something, whether that's something like intellectual, whether it's something physical, if you're able to have the mental capacity to complete a task, uh, maintain some level of responsibility, then you should in turn be responsible for your own well-being, right? And why am I talking about this, right? Like what does that have to do with anything? So I was listening to some different shows and different podcasts and different little news outlets and this and that throughout the week, and uh, a common theme has been kind of popping up where it's just been victims of. I mean, I think that's just a news cycle, because I think people are getting bored of talking about how dumb Biden sounds when he talks, and like they're kind of just beating that horse to death. It's like, yes, we know he has trouble speaking. We know he is obviously not within his right mind. Like, we know he is not qualified for this job. Like, we get it already. Okay, like, move on to something else. So they need to fill that in with other things that scare you, right? And I think like crime and stabbings and shootings and stuff like that is really what scares people. So I think that's the reasoning for that. They're kind of moving away from Biden, because he did like his little news, the little speech thing or whatever he was that he did, and it was horrendous. Like, it was just a big waste of time. I tried to listen to it. I couldn't listen to it. It's very dangerous to have man that man child, that geriatric old man talk, because it's hard to listen to him. And I really advocate of listening to both sides, but man, that dude really puts it to the test. Like, he makes it's a challenge. Really a challenge to like sit through a whole speech that he has to do. Him and that Kamala chick, like, man, it is rough. it's rough, it's hard. So I think news companies and news outlets like Fox and uh, CNN and well, CNN's been pretty strong with him. I think CNN likes Biden enough to the point where it's like, hey, he's what we got, and it's not Trump, right? Like let's talk about what they still find a way to throw Trump in there, but it's whatever. But in that case, they're kind of bringing in all these stories. So there was this news article that popped up. So doing like a little transition here. This is from the LA Times, Los Angeles Times, right? So a man suspected of stabbing a 24-year-old woman who worked at a furniture shop in Hancock Park last week was arrested this past Wednesday, right? So this dude, he's suspected of stabbing. So okay, so I mean, we still live in the United States, right? Everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So this dude had a rap sheet, right? So about 20 minutes later, a customer walked into the store, found this is the comfort. That was the woman that got stabbed. They found her on the floor, covered in blood, and was pronounced dead at the scene. So it's just very straightforward. A person went into a furniture shop, a store in. This happened in California, by the way. Where was it? Pasadena, right here. So a guy walks into the store, something obviously went down. I don't think there's any video of it or anything like that. Uh, and stabbed a woman, like just stabbed. Okay, it doesn't seem like they haven't talked about any motive or anything like that. So I found this interesting right here was that it showed her on Tuesday. The department released video showing a man inside a nearby 7-Eleven store about 30 minutes after the killing. So this is right, like this dude right here, supposedly he's homeless. This dude has sunglasses. He probably has a cell phone. I don't know what this is, like a vape pen or something. I don't know what's going on, but look at this dude. This is like the most well-dressed homeless person I've ever seen. Man, where we live, the people that are straight up homeless, man, they're like your old time like hobo looking homeless. Like these are some nice looking homeless people. Look, he's got a mask on and everything, and that's like a nice mask too. It's not like all those ratted, raggy masks, the ones that have that cheap blue, cotton fiber or whatever that turn all brown and nasty after like a day of usage. He's got a nice, clean mask. He's looking pretty clean. This is like the nicest hobo I've ever seen. Like that's crazy. So what I found funny is that the way they worded it, though, I had read it. I'm not gonna read the whole article, but the way that they worded it, they didn't say he's homeless. They used like a different type of wording. 20 minutes later, where was it? The article's not that long. 7-Eleven, he wearing dark hoodie, backpack, man inside. Right here. Before his arrest, Smith had been seen in Pasadena, Santa Monica, West Hollywood, other locations, Southern California. Police said authorities believe he is unhoused and used public transportation to get around the area. I like this word, unhoused. So so you would go to people and you ask them like, "Are you homeless? Do you not have a nose?" It's like, "No, I'm not homeless. I'm unhoused." So so you do have a home. Just I don't even know how to uninterpret this. Like unhoused. He's homeless. He's a homeless dude. Like why? What is this word unhoused? Jeez, it's so crazy. But the crazy thing is, moving on, like what's the purpose of this? Why am I talking about this? This guy is a criminal. Like he has a rap sheet. So right here, Smith was also arrested in November on suspicion of firing a weapon inside an occupied vehicle, according to the court records from South Carolina. Okay, where he was released on a $50,000 bond. The weapon was a flare gun, and LAPD source said on Wednesday for a motion was made in court to revoke his bond. So what they're doing is they're downplaying this. They're straight up downplaying this. They're saying like, oh look, he had a weapons charge. He was firing a weapon, but it was just a flare gun. It wasn't like a real weapon. right? Like, what are you talking about? So, because they're talking about it, they talk about it up here. According to the records, Smith was marked for extradition in North Carolina on charges of assault with a deadly weapon, carrying a concealed weapon, and other crimes. So, right here, assault with a deadly weapon, they move on to clarify, like, oh, but that deadly weapon, it really wasn't deadly. It was just a flare gun, right? So, this dude had a rap sheet. He was released on bond, and he goes and stabs somebody. So, needless to say, I think this guy's a piece of trash. Like if he is guilty, he's a piece of trash. Again, we're all innocent until proven guilty. But if he is the one that actually stabbed this girl, you know, then he's a piece of trash. There's no debating me on that. Like that's the hill that I'll die on for that. It's like you just go in and stab somebody who's just working at a furniture store. Like for what? Ridiculous. But this brings me back to personal responsibility. I don't want to put any blame on this girl, but why wasn't this girl able to defend herself? It's kind of a stupid question. I know. I know it's a stupid question. Like, well, he's some dude. Like she doesn't expect like he probably just, jumped on her and she had no time to react. She did. The article does mention that she texted a friend or she texted somebody that uh, she was feeling concerned about her safety. All right, and then lo and behold, her intuition was correct. Something ends up happening. So, if this girl is working in a place, and I'm assuming she was working by herself because she was found 20 minutes later by a customer who walked in. So she was there for a while by herself. So if she's feeling that she has that intuition, right? Like, hey, I don't feel safe. Something doesn't feel right. How come she didn't do anything to make herself feel safe? And now I'm thinking, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, there's no way she could have known this would happen, right? Like if she knew this would happen, she wouldn't have gone to work, right? She would have stayed home or she would have called the police or something, right? If she would have known. But that's the thing. We never know, right? No one ever knows that something bad is going to happen. You just need to be aware that something could happen. Something bad could happen. So whose responsibility is it to make you feel safe in those situations? And that's what I'm going back to, that I think that it's a person's individual responsibility to take care of themselves. Again, I'm not blaming this poor girl. She was just there doing her job. She was minding her own business. She wasn't hurting anybody. I'm not blaming this poor girl. I'll get to it. I know if some of you are getting upset because it sounds like I'm blaming this girl or whatever, I'll get to it. So, she was obviously of sound mind, sound body. She was competent enough to get herself a job, like a retail job. And I'm not going to knock her for, like, I cannot knock, like, retail sucks. I worked at a GameStop before. I worked at like restaurants before, fast food restaurants before. Dealing with customers and dealing with money and dealing with managers, it sucks. It's a rough job. I hate retail. It's like, yeah, it's really really bad. I'd rather go dig a hole than have to deal with people in retail. I'd rather like dig like trenches to lay down like plumbing and stuff like that with a shovel and like a pickaxe than have to deal with people in retail. That's a rough job. That's a rough situation to be in. I would hate that. So this girl is obviously competent enough to handle herself in those types of situations, dealing with customers, dealing with money, having a storefront, being responsible for property, and all these things like that. Like she's obviously competent enough. So I think she's competent enough to take care of herself, right? But what happens when you take away a person's freedom, when you when you make it difficult for a person to protect themselves? So I don't know if you guys are kind of getting the theme of where I'm going here, right? So I think everybody should have a gun. That's what I'm kind of leading into. I kind of wanted to get near the end, but it's kind of hard not to talk about it. Why wasn't this girl allowed to have a gun? Maybe she didn't want to carry a gun, right? Maybe she personally didn't like a gun. Maybe she personally doesn't like guns. That's perfectly fine too. But my point is, I'm getting that is that this happened in California, and to my understanding, in California, it's very difficult to get a gun, and it's very difficult to practice using that gun, becoming proficient with that gun. They limit your magazine size. They limit your. I know I'm talking from personal experience, and that every time I try to order something for a build that I'm making, or any type of pistol that I want to buy, or ammunition, or anything like that, there's always these little disclaimers that say, "Oh, make sure if you live in California, da 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 da. Make sure like, oh, this is especially for people who live in California, da 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 da." We again, my wife and I went shopping yesterday, and we actually, added another system to our defense, to our multiple defense systems. And on there, I noticed as like, oh, this item that you bought also comes with a lock that is certified for California. That it meets with the regulations of California. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's a lock. Like, why do locks need to be different in California? It makes no sense to me. So when you take away a person's abilities, a person's freedoms to decide for themselves how you can, how you're allowed to protect yourself, basically, I think the responsibility then falls on the state, but they pay no price for it. Because look, the girl is the one that's dead. Gavin Newsom didn't get stabbed. Whoever made these policies, or whoever is in charge of making these gun policies or whatever in California, they're not dead, right? The girl suffered. So what do they care, right? So that's what I'm trying to get at. I'm not trying to say like this girl should have had a gun and that would have solved the problem, because it's like I'm putting the blame on the girl, right? It's not her fault. It's really not her fault. I'm putting this on the state level, that like, why was this person not given the freedom to defend herself the way that she felt most appropriate? That's kind of where I'm going with this. That's the thing. I'm using this as an example. This article is not the end all be all. That's going to end the gun debate, and that, you know, 2A is should trump everything, and rights should not be infringed, and blah blah blah. This is not the end all be all article that will solve that. This is just an example. So I can even take this to, it's like I'm reaching for the low hanging fruit, right? It's California. Come on, like everyone that I know like doesn't like California. So I'll take it. I'll take it to this level. I'll take it to this side right here. So this is from the Texas Tribune. So Texas Tribune. Where's the title? Right here. Austin police chief weighs in on city's deadliest year in decades. So this is this past year in December, right? Police reform and defunding the department. So they talk about how they don't have enough cops in the streets. That's basically what they're talking about. So it's so funny too how the way this is framed. It's interesting. This is in Texas. So if you guys don't know where Austin is, this is in Texas. Austin is the capital of Texas, which I don't think it should be Austin. Everyone that I know, like friends and family and things like that, yeah, pretty much everybody that I know, that I hang out with regularly, that has similar viewpoints to what I do, similar interests as I do, they hate Austin. Austin and Houston, but I think Houston more, like I hate Houston more because of the traffic. Like that place has been under construction for the longest time. I hate driving in Houston. It sucks. It's real bad. And like if you have your Google Maps and like think, oh, just put it on the GPS and it tells you where to go. You have to have like special settings on there so that you don't get any of the tolls. Because if you just type in Google Maps, it'll give you toll routes, and you'll have to pay tolls and stuff like that because it just gives you the fastest route. So you have to put settings on there where it's like, okay, I don't want the toll routes, or I don't want this. Like you have to filter it, and it's just a pain. It's stupid. So I just like, just don't go to Houston. I hate Houston. Right? I'll drive through Houston, but I don't want to like stay for an extended period of time, like 5 days or anything like that. Screw that. It sucks. But Austin more so because of the people, and it's dumb. I've met people from Austin that visit, and they're kind of pompousy. Like they think that, I don't know. I'm not gonna say what they think, but they come off as if like they're some sort of like gift to the world or something like that. That they can do no wrong, and that they're always right, and that they know what's good and what's bad. Like it's annoying. These people are like so. Yeah, this is as close to California as I will ever get. Like going to Austin will be my trip to California because I dread of the idea of going to California, of ever visiting California. So I'll just, if I really wanted to go someplace that's like California just to get the experience of it, I would probably go to Austin. But even then, I would question it because I wouldn't want to give them any of my money. But okay, I'm kind of getting off topic here. So Austin would have enough police officers on the street, would not have enough police officers on the streets, even if they filled every vacant position on the force. So they're saying even if they had everybody, like, even if they could hire every single vacancy, put a person, they still wouldn't have enough. They need more. They need more. So it goes on to say that right here. It takes 9 minutes, blah, blah, blah. Where was it? In September, they wouldn't announce, but they're kind of giving the reason, like, why is that the case? So right here, this is it. This is from the Texas Tribune. Greg Abbott, who is the governor of Texas, if you guys don't know, Greg Abbott, the state Republican lawmakers, okay, and the state, so it's not just Greg Abbott, so it's the Republicans too. The Republican pounced on Austin. They're picking a fight. They're beating up on poor Austin, passing a law earlier this year that punishes large cities that cut their police spending by forbidding them from raising property taxes. So these evil Republican lawmakers and this evil freaking I'm thinking of the guy from Mad Max, Greg Abbott, like Furious Joe, Greg Abbott, Mad Max, Greg Abbott in his wheelchair, like Furious Joe and well, no, Immortal Joe. Thinking of Furious Joe. I'm thinking of Furiosa. That was the girl, right? That drove the war rig. And Greg Abbott is Immortal Joe, and him and his war boys are the Republican lawmakers are pouncing on Austin. They launched the war rig to go and pounce on Austin, and they passed a law that made it so that they can't raise their property taxes, and that's what's defunding the police. Okay, so let me take this. Let me take this further. So same publication, the Texas Tribune, right here, just so that you guys can see this. They're both the same. The Texas Tribune, the Texas Tribune. So right here, Austin City Council cuts the police department budget by 1/3. So the same. It's the same people. These same people wrote. I didn't see the date. Let me check the date on this one. This was in August. So they knew that the city council had cut the police department budget, but yet they go and write that no, it was Greg Abbott that did it. It's Greg Abbott and the Republicans did it. It's not Austin's fault. It's not our personal. It's not our personal city's fault. We're doing everything right. We're trying to do everything that we're trying to do everything that's best for our people, for our constituents. But look, the Immortal Joe Abbott and the Republican war boys are trying to pounce on Austin by passing laws that forbid cities to spend to raise money by raising property taxes. And that's just that just contradicts itself too. Like it said that even if they filled in all the vacancies, well, maybe they only have so many. Never mind. I'm thinking maybe they only have so many vacancies because their budget is already so small, right? So they probably have vacancies, but it's probably 1/3 the size that it was before, right? Because they themselves, the city council, cut the police department's budget by 1/3. So again, I'm not trying to go into a whole news cycle thing and talk about the news or anything like that. I'm just using this to reinforce the point that the purpose of these articles was to disprove the notion that I'm picking on California because California is like the low-hanging fruit. This is just the Austin articles were just to show that this happens in Texas too, because I know a lot of people think that Texas is like, man, everybody has a gun. Like if the United States was like an open world MMORPG, the United States, basically, the United States and Florida would be like the PvP zones, right? Like you go in there and everybody has a sword or a gun, and you're like, you need to be ready to fight because this is the PvP zone and everywhere else is just PvE, right? Everyone just kind of walking around minding their own business. But something bad could happen at Texas. Something bad can happen in Florida, right? Because everybody has a gun. Their gun laws are so lax and blah blah blah, this and that. That's not the case. At least not the case everywhere in Texas, right? So again, bad things can happen everywhere. That's kind of like the main point. I kind of threw these articles in there just for fun. But bad things can happen everywhere. It doesn't matter where you live, right? So I think that it's extremely important that everybody understands that you do have a right to defend yourself, right? That's a right that's given by God. That at least that's what we believe in the United States, right? Other countries may believe different, right? Like, your rights come from a king or a queen, or if you live in some sort of monarch or whatever, and then those they determine what's good for you, and that's through God. So for the most part, everybody gets their rights from God. That's kind of the common. I think that's a common ground that a lot of us can get on. Of course, there's going to be those crazy people that say like, no, I get mine from some space unicorn or some. I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to say a joke, but it's falling flat. Whatever. But the point is, I think all of us can kind of agree it's not really that far of a stretch to when you have it. It's not a good debate to say that everybody has rights and they come from God, right? Whatever your God is, that's a kind of a universal belief, right? So why should we limit the way that someone should defend themselves, or someone can limit the way someone can defend themselves, right? Why should we determine what is best for an individual person? What is appropriate for an individual person? So like in California, like you can only have like 5 rounds in a magazine or something like that, or 10 rounds in a magazine. Why? Why is that number 10? So why is 10 safer than 20? Safer than any number, right? Who determined that number and why? Who are you to say that you only need 10 rounds in your magazine? What if you have a person who lives in a rural area, and I'm thinking of like my grandparents. See, like the examples that I give up are kind of like personal examples. I'm thinking of my grandparents. My grandfather is old, he's blind, and he's deaf. Like he's not completely blind. He can see, but he can't see very well. And he's deaf. Like he can you have to yell at him and everything like that. And people look at me funny when I'm like talking loud. They think I'm upset or angry or whatever. But it's like, no, I'm just raising my voice so my grandfather can be part of the conversation. And like it pisses me off because everyone's like, don't yell. Why are you talking so loud? It's like, well, my grandfather, he can't hear. I want him to hear what I'm saying so that if he hears me say something stupid, he can jump in the conversation and he can be part of it, right? Like I don't want to leave my grandfather out of the conversation. He's sitting at the table with us. Like he's not a child, right? So that's a, whatever. I'm kind of going off topic here, but in that case, my grandparents kind of lived. It's not out in the middle of nowhere. It's a very poor neighborhood. Like my wife can attest to it. It's called the ranch. Like it's funny. It's like a backstory. My wife's parents at the time, well, she was my girlfriend. They didn't like the idea of us dating because I lived in the part of town that they thought that that's where all the drug dealers are. Like that's where all the people, like all the weed that comes from the community, that the community itself. We have this pandemic of weed. We have this epidemic of people bringing in weed, and it all comes from this one little town. It comes from the ranch. And like that was kind of like a little inside joke for me and my wife, that her parents didn't like me, not because of who I was or my values, but because I came from this little town that supposedly that everyone there was a drug dealer. But anyway, that's the town that my grandparents live in. They still live there, and it's not a big town. It's a very small little community and everything like that. So say they could only have say they can only have 10 round magazines, right? What if my grandfather, who's blind, or it's like he's partially blind, he has very horrible vision, and deaf, is caught by himself and he's in a situation where he has to defend himself? He better make sure he shoots that person, and with at least a few of those 10 shots that he does have, right? Because hopefully if that one or two shot actually hits something, it stops the threat, right? Because he's not going to get another chance, right? So in that case, it's like, why should we put 10 rounds? Like, shouldn't he be able to be the one to determine, like, hey, I might miss some of my shots, and that might not be enough to deter the threat, right? So I don't know how many rounds that I need. I need as many rounds as I could possibly get in my firearm so that I can make sure that I have more than enough and not enough, right? Because that's a situation you don't want to be in, wishing you had more when you don't have enough, right? I'm of the sound mind. I'm of the mindset that I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it, right? The people who don't understand that concept are people that don't have to do anything for themselves because they hire other people to do it. They don't have to they have the luxury of not thinking of those problems, right? And who are they to put these limitations on us? They are not us. They don't know our individual situations, right? They don't know that my grandfather is blind. They don't know that this woman is working in a part of the city that could expose her to dangerous people who will stab someone for no reason. They don't know this. They don't know our individual situations. So why should people be dictating what we can and cannot have when it comes to our personal responsibilities, which if you forgot, is our personal responsibility to protect ourselves, right? That's our responsibility. That's our personal responsibility. It's amazing to me. So I kind of wanted to leave with this. Again, I don't want to make this too long. I know my episodes have been getting longer and longer, and I don't want that to become a habit, especially when it's just me by myself. When the slanted scholar starts coming back and we're having like these conversations and going into things, that's when it makes sense, right? When it's just me by myself, I don't want it to go too long and bother you guys with too much information. But my throwing my 2 cents in there is kind of like go out and buy a gun. Like if you are legally allowed to possess a firearm, I think everyone should own a firearm. Go have some sort of training. Go, and it's hard at first because it's like going to the gym, right? If you don't go to the gym very often, if you're like new to fitness and say it's like the beginning of the year and it's like, oh, this is the year I go to the gym and I become one of those gym people and I'm going to get into fitness and blah, blah, blah. And like you go and it's so discouraging because you see all these people there and it's like, man, everyone looks like they know what they're doing. And you got these people coming in and they're like, oh, can I give you some tips? Can you want some tips? That's my Tropic Thunder reference if you guys didn't pick up on that. And they throw in their 2 cents about everything and like, no, your form is bad and blah blah blah, all this bull crap. It's like, dude, just go and do your own thing. Don't just ignore everybody. Put your headphones on and go do what you want to do. If you want to go work out your legs, go work out your legs. If you want to walk on the treadmill, go walk on the treadmill. Do whatever the hell you want. Screw, don't worry about what everybody else is thinking. Same thing when you go to a gun store. Like, go to a gun store and tell the person like, hey, I'm thinking of buying this, I'm thinking of buying that, I'm interested in this, I'm interested in that, and tell me if you have any products that match my needs because of my particular situation. You don't even have to tell them why you're doing it. Just be like, I want to do this, this, and this, and can you guys accommodate that? And if they can, then cool. If they can't, then okay, I'll go to a different gun store and see if they can accommodate, right? That you kind of have to take that mentality of like going to the gym type of thing, because man, you run into so many like people that they're experts on everything. They know everything about everything. And like I went into, like, for example, I went into a store recently, not recently, it was maybe about a month ago, month and a half ago. It wasn't too long ago. And I was looking for something specific and I wasn't 100% sure they would have it. And I talked to this kid there. He was a kid. I talked to this kid there and I said like, hey, I'm looking for, so and so. Would you guys happen to have? It's like, no, we don't have any on the floor here, but let me look in our warehouse. We might have some in stock in our warehouse. Let me check. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I didn't even know you guys had a warehouse. Cool. And I was looking around and I noticed they had like a variant of what I wanted. Uh, but I didn't want to compromise. And it's like, no, I want something specific because I have this idea of what I want to do, and this doesn't this doesn't fulfill that idea, right? This doesn't help me try to get to where I'm trying to go. So the guy looks and looks like, no, we don't have it, and well, we're not able to order it at this time, and blah blah blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's fine. And then he tries to pitch me on something. Tries, oh, have you considered buying this right here and this and that? I was like, yeah, like I like that, but I'm used to this platform, and I gave him my reasoning why. Just having a conversation. Granted, I didn't have to tell him why, right? like why I didn't like something. I was just having conversation. It was like no one was really in the store, and my wife was kind of browsing around. We are just kind of just there, just having a conversation. And I told him like no, and this one it had like a "Let's Go Brandon" thing on it. It's like yeah, like I don't really like this. I'm not trying to make a statement or anything on there. I'm just I'm trying to complete a project that I'm doing. And he's like, well, we were talking about it, and he kind of goes into it, and he says, well, maybe you should think about this. Maybe you should think about that. I was like, and I told him, yeah, like I never really thought about that because I didn't need to think about that. It's like that's kind of an extra step that I don't need. And he kind of tells me, oh yeah, what you really need to do. This guy's telling me what I need to do. This guy tells me, you need to do some more research into what you want to do, and blah blah blah. It's like so what are you talking about? I need to do like I didn't tell this. I tell this to the guy. I don't want to be rude because he's just a little snot-nosed kid. Like what does he know? He like opens up he was appendix carry and he pulls out his his safety his self-defense system, right? His personal self-defense system. He's like, yeah, I did mine like this and blah blah blah. I was like, okay, I didn't ask you if you did yours. Like I'm trying to do something that I'm doing, and if you can't accommodate that, it's like yeah, like okay, then I'll just leave. I'll go on my way. And it just turned into one of those things. So even I, as myself, I completely understand how daunting and how intimidating it might be to go into those places and to talk to people like that, right? Because a lot of don't I totally understand. A lot of them are those types of people that the power has gotten to their head, that the power of information, the power of knowledge. Think of how awesome it is when you know everything about something and someone doesn't know anything about that one thing. How much power, how much intellectual power you have over that person. It goes to these people's heads. It does. It's real. Like anybody in the gun community can attest to this. They know what I'm talking about. I don't like going to gun shops because of these types of people. Don't get me wrong, not all gun shops are like this. There are some people like, hey, what can we do for you? It's like, oh, I'm looking for this. Like, oh yeah, we got some here. Yeah, that's a good choice. Those are really really cool. I like that. Yeah, that's a cool thing. And they'll be honest with you. They'll be honest with you, and they'll respect your your opinion in that you're going there for a specific reason, and they're just there to facilitate that. They're not there to try to push you into thinking like you should be thinking like this and you shouldn't be thinking like that. This is what you want right here. And those types of people that are the ones where it's gotten to their head and it's like they haven't had anybody challenge their intelligence. And if you do challenge their intelligence, they have the right to tell you, well, you can just get out of my store because you don't like what I like. And it's just the reality. It's just the fact of life that those people exist, and you kind of just have to shut them out. Just like it is online, right? You post a comment, you say something on a social media site, and someone responds with something stupid and mean, and you just got to ignore it. Just block them, ignore it, and move on, right? Saying if you're playing an online video game and someone's talking trash, just mute the mic. Mute their mic, right? Just mute them, and you don't have to listen to them anymore. Same thing when you go into one of these stores and you feel like the person is like badgering you, making you feel like you're dumb. Just you're a customer, and they're treating you like they know what's better. They know better for you more than you know for you. Then just leave, go to a different store, right? But you definitely have to do your due diligence. When if you're first gonna buy a self-defense system, a personal self-defense system for yourself, I highly recommend you do go to a shop and talk to somebody who is knowledgeable in the field and learn a little bit, right? Because we live in a place where anybody can go and buy anything they want. At least in Texas, I know that there's some places that they have certain regulations and things like that. It's different for everybody, but for the most part, generally speaking, at least in Texas, you can go and buy a firearm without a license. You don't need to have any sort of training or anything like that. You do probably have to have a driver's license, right? Because you have to do a background check. So go, even if you're not going to buy, just go and learn the process and get familiar. Get a lot of systems on your hands. Like go to a gun show. a shop and say like, hey, I'm looking to do this. I'm looking to buy. This is what I'm thinking. Like I want to see, what would work for me. What would I prefer? And just be open with people. Talk to them and let them know what you're trying to do. And for the most part, generally speaking, a lot of the people that they understand because they've been there before. Every now and then, I just a warning: you're gonna run into those people like, oh, don't do this, don't do that. Oh, maybe like they turn it into a very bad experience, and it discourages people, thinking like, oh man, like this person obvious is very serious about this, and maybe I'm not responsible enough to handle this system. Maybe I need some sort of special qualification. Like, it discourages people a lot. It's like, if you're smart enough, if you have the mind of the responsibility, the insight enough to go and say like, hey, I want to be responsible about this. I want to be informed. I want to ask questions. If you are of that mind, you absolutely should be looking into these things, because you that just proves that you are not just, for lack of a better term, no pun intended, you're not all gung ho about it, right? You're trying to do things the right way, and you most certainly are going to be safe, right? You're going to want to do things safely. But when you're trying to figure out what you want, you're not in the act of actually, like, testing guns out and shooting and things like that. If you're in like a gun shop, or at a especially at some sort of gun show, right? We have in Texas, we have a thing called SACSET, and it's Texas spelled backwards, and it's a big gun show, and they travel all around Texas, and they go to different cities, and they have a lot of cool things. Like, you can see a lot of different things, and they let you touch the guns. They let you hold them in your hand, and you can see what works for you. And that's what I would recommend you would do. Go and yeah, like, now that I think about it, my wife and I have been going for the past year, maybe 2 years. Yeah, probably for the past 2 years, and we've never met a person that has been like the type where they're looking to discourage people. They come up to you and say, hey, you guys okay? You guys have any questions? You guys need anything? It's like, no, we're kind of just browsing. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll be walking around. You guys let me know you need something. And and every person that's a vendor there has been with that attitude. So I would highly recommend something like that. Just getting your hands on a lot of, self-defense systems, and see which works best for you. You don't necessarily have to shoot them. You don't necessarily have to be like, go to a range and have an expert and have training and all this stuff. Like, no, just go out there and see what you're comfortable hand. See what what feels comfortable in your hands. Something that you already have the pre mental notion that, hey, I can handle this. This is something that I feel comfortable, that feels comfortable in my hands, so that when you do take it out to the range, when you do actually go and fire it and test it and get used to how it works, you're already comfortable with it. You already have a foundation with it, right? It's not something brand new that you've never experienced before in your life. You're already familiar with it to a certain extent, because that's how accidents happen. People go out there and they don't know what they're doing, and they just take something because it looks cool, not necessarily because it works for them, and accidents happen. So that's what I kind of wanted to leave off on, like, the idea that I believe that it's our personal responsibility to take care of ourselves. So, long story short, too long didn't read version, go and buy a gun. Go and buy a gun, because, as you can see, there's places, it's happening everywhere. California, Austin, it doesn't matter where you live. I'm pretty sure there's every state that has these situations where people are put in a scenario where, if they had to defend themselves, they're already at a disadvantage. They're forced to be in a disadvantage. And that's a choice that I make when I choose places to go. Like, if I go to a place and it says you cannot carry any way, like, you cannot open carry, you cannot conceal carry, we don't want any guns here at all, I just don't go into that place. I just don't go into that place, and it's like, well, I don't want to put myself in a situation where, if something were to go down, I can't defend myself, right? It's just one of those things that I kind of have in the back of my head. I don't expect something bad to happen, but if something were to happen, I don't trust that it's someone else's responsibility to take care of me. It's my responsibility to take care of myself. Right? So that's kind of what I want to leave you guys with. Again, thank you guys for watching. We appreciate all the views that we're getting. We're not getting like crazy tons of views or anything like that. We're not growing like crazy. I saw a video of Flecka Talks. Flecka Talks. He started a like a podcast type of thing, kind of like what we're doing. His is better though because he's been doing this for a while. He knows what's up. I like Flecka Talks. He very funny dude, and he's got like all these subscribers and all these views and growing up huge. And he's been doing this for a long time, so everyone just kind of follows him. And once he started doing it, everyone it's like, oh yeah, I'll just follow that. So he has like crazy growth. But we get like 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 views. I think that's awesome. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this little show that we have here. Again, guys, this is Slamfire Media. If you guys don't know what Slamfire is, just do like a YouTube search and look for a Slamfire shotgun, and that'll give you an idea of what this project kind of is. I'm not here to give you this crazy factual intellectual type of we're looking at data, we're looking at things like Steven Crowder. If you guys seen like Louder with Crowder, he's got all of this like research, and he's got sources, and he's got data points, and he's got all these articles, like all that, like they do like deep dive stuff. Like it's a comedy show. I interpret it as a comedy show. I mean, I'm laughing most of the time, but they do like legit research into this. Like this is Slamfire. Like this is not meant to be like hyper accurate. This is just throwing stuff out there, right? Just for fun. So we really appreciate you guys taking the time to watch our videos and things like that. Remember, be sure to go to slamfiremedia.com. We have all our episodes listed there, and you can check out our videos on YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble. Links are all not in the description. Well, yeah, the link for Slamfire Media I usually put in the description. So if you guys go into the description of the video, you guys will see a link for slamfiremedia.com. Thanks for checking us out. You guys have a good one.